Hi, I'm Rosie. Welcome to my podcast called Yoga Pose. I'm Yoga Pose. My family used to call me Rosie Pose. And I feel like the nickname made me destined to become a yoga teacher. These episodes are a chance for me to share more of myself and my journey, as well as the benefits of yoga and meditation as I see them. So expect stories, sutras, and jokes, because I think I'm pretty funny and laughing is going to help us loosen up. Yoga isn't a game, but there's no reason we can't play. So being playful stops us striving, and we become explorers simply for the pleasure of it. Today's Yoga Pose episode is called Failure. Now, failure isn't a word we like to use or associate with ourselves, but I'm going to show you what an advantage failing is. And I should know because I failed quite a bit in my early years of teaching. I set up classes at times or locations that just weren't viable. I was way too shy to market myself. And I did the thing that every new teacher does, which is running promotions on classes. So like the first class is half price, things like that. And in theory, it makes sense, right? You just want to get people through the door. But unfortunately, what we find with these kind of promotions is you just get people who want a bargain. And that's totally fine to want a bargain. But the cost of that bit of saving for the potential student is that maybe the teacher doesn't cover the rent for the studio. And that just means long-term, it's a failure. The business won't work. Now, I'm a very young person, so I've put everything into my business. And that means I have worked every day for almost 3 years. If I'm not teaching, kind of the easy bit, rocking up in leggings. If I'm not teaching, I'm writing. Content generation is what it's called. Or I'm studying and letting ideas bubble away in my subconscious. And what this means is I've compressed 6 years of failings and mess-ups into 3 years. So I get to make failures now, which really should be scheduled for 2020. And that's why I mentor teachers. In teaching, I mentor them in teaching yoga and crucially the business of yoga, because I have so much to share. I've made a ton of mistakes, which means the people I mentor don't have to. It doesn't cost them as much. And by, messing up so often, selling myself too short, not realizing my money blocks, these things all cost me really dearly. I had to get to grips with all of these things and learn tools and seek support that helped me to shift out of that place. And now I thrive rather than just survive. And, in those early years, there wasn't even that much survival, actually. It was really challenging. So, if you're identifying with some of this, if you're a teacher, maybe you're new or, you've been teaching for a long time, but just not really got to grips with the business side of things, you can find more out about my mentoring by visiting iamyogapose.com. So I've introduced Yoga Sutras on these podcasts before, but also in my blog. What do you mean you haven't read my blog posts? Well, you can read them on my website, doyouromthing.co.uk. Or if you subscribe, I'll email them and send them direct to your inbox. You're welcome. So the sutras, if you don't know, are the first recorded statements on yoga and are over 1,700 years old. The sutras, or think of them just as statements, like very early forms of memes, they are guidance on yoga practice, but not purely in the sense of asana or postures. They're about seeing yoga as a way of life. So recently, I've been teaching in classes that yoga is actually an exercise in befriending our imperfection. You stand up and wobble around, you resist, become a bit tense. And in that process, you discover one absolute perfect truth. But imperfection is liberation. Imperfection is the essence of being human. It's what motivates us to engage in self-study, to change what isn't working, and also to accept what we can't change. And all of this makes living authentically become possible. So back to the Sutras. There are 9 blocks to progress in our yoga practice, which is this way of living. And I'm just going to share a few of the impediments that I've been working on recently. So it's a bit wordy, but go with it. Disinclination, which is the mind turning away from practice because of habitual patterns or just a lack of enthusiasm. So for everyone who's ever said to me, "Oh, I really should come back to a class. I do feel better when I go, but I just haven't been able to find the time recently." That's what's going on here, right? You're disinclined. This thought is holding you back. You feel better from practicing, so just go, just make time, or think about the words and the language you use rather than saying, I just haven't had the time. That's a real disempowering statement. Just own it and be like, I've chosen not to have the time, because that's true, right? If it was something that really mattered, something you prioritized, you would find the time. Of course you would. Now, doubt is another real block to yoga. And I have plenty of experience with this. Doubt is what happens after you have a bold and exciting idea. The festival tickets you bought or the course that you signed up to. The mind bounces between faith and lack of faith in the practice. So I agreed to attend and teach at a yoga festival. Oh no, it wasn't even a yoga festival. It was a normal person festival with alcohol and everything. So I agreed to teach some yoga at a music festival in the summer. And I've been asked to do these things for years, always been invited. And every time I've said no. But, I have a thing sometimes where I say yes to stuff that's way off in the future. So today's Rosie is yeah, we'll do that. And then, I'm thinking, future Rosie can deal with the consequences of this one. And as it got closer to the festival, I asked my experienced festival goer friends what I need to take in general coping strategies, because I was a bit doubtful. Now, I can't really share all the responses I got to that because, they're just not pretty. I learned a lot about my friends and what they get up to. So yeah, I can't share those here, but one response was spot on. My friend said, if you plan to stay out late, take a cardi because it can get cold. And the reason I loved that was because he was not when you stay out late. He was if you plan to stay out late. And also take a cardigan, rude. What he meant to say, I'm sure, was take a cool overpriced yoga hoodie with namaste written on it, because that's what I tend to wear. Anyway, I did doubt my ability to endure a festival at times, but I know that's what happens when you choose to do something exciting. And of course, this festival, I'm only sharing it with you. It turns out brilliantly. It was actually the perfect festival for me. It was pretty chilled. There was amazing vegan food. There were even hot tubs and Morshiba, who I have loved since I was a kid. And they make yoga playlists a dream because almost all the tracks are just perfect for yoga. The classes I taught at the festival were rammed, and I met loads of wonderful people. I also, I wanted to surprise myself, to do something a little bit wild and interesting. So they had intravenous vitamin infusions. So myself and the friend I went with sat down one afternoon and had an intravenous vitamin infusion. And I was just like, that's so me, isn't it? I go to a music festival where there's all these other temptations, but I actually come back from a 3-day festival feeling better hydrated and full of magnesium. So if any very tame festival organisers want to invite me to teach at one next year, I'm totally up for it. I now know that you have to take 150,000 eco wipes and not expect a hot shower. So these sutras are so useful, they provide ideas about what might be holding us back on and off the mat. We've talked about disinclination, so poor habits. And we've also talked about doubt. These are things we can all identify with, even though they were first noted over 1,500 years ago. When you think about it, perfectionism is like a hamster wheel. You run incessantly with the hope of achieving something, but won't jump off for fear of failure or mediocrity. You do the same thing time and time again, expecting different results, and it's exhausting, trust me. So as I've said, I mentor new yoga teachers, and it's common to feel less than perfect when you first start. Or actually, when you've been teaching for years, but new teachers burst onto the scene and appear to be killing it. But what does that even mean? What is perfect? It's hard because in most jobs, there's a period of shadowing. Everyone in the office knows you're new, so they don't expect too much. And kind of the worst really that could happen is, you do that thing, you send an email saying, please see attached, and then there's nothing there. For yoga teachers, it's pretty hard. My equivalent is probably getting lefts and rights wrong. But, I do that in front of a room full of people rather than via email. And it's hard, it's not easy. I'm there looking at my left foot, which is wrapped underneath the right and is therefore on the right-hand side. But I'm mirroring, so it's and that's it. That's as far as my brain can take me. I'm asking it for the answer. And it's like, oh yeah, great question, Rosie. I don't know. Let me just check. And I'm still in front of a room full of people. So either I admit that I'm completely confused, or I'll say top leg, bottom leg, whatever it is. And I know some of my students, obviously, now all of you, will know that that's me trying to disguise my mess up. But actually, it's the slight mess ups that have made me really good at lefts and rights, despite what I just said. I'm pretty good now at mirroring and getting lefts and rights correct. And I've had the opportunity to get things wrong so often that I pretty much get things right most of the time. I've become quicker improvising, and I don't take things too seriously, which helps my students lighten up. I think some of the best parts of my teachings actually are where I fluff my words. And it's a very sweet moment where the class laughs, and sometimes that, more than Ujjayi breathing, brings us back into the moment. So hopefully this episode has inspired you to seize this incredible opportunity to fail. And I'll finish on a quote from The Art of Not Falling Apart. And it says, "Fail better." There's a lot of research to show that failure is central to success. The American basketball player Michael Jordan said, "I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted with taking the winning shot and missed. I failed over and over again, and that is why I succeed. Failure teaches us great lessons." Thank you so much for listening, if indeed you still are. You can visit doyouromthing.co.uk to see my teaching timetable, workshops, and retreats. I would love to connect with you in person. This podcast is about building a community, so keep reaching out to me. Do Your Om Thing is my Instagram handle and Facebook page. Before you go, think about your karma, okay? You've enjoyed this episode, hopefully as much as I've enjoyed making it for you. So help a yogini out by sharing and leaving a review. I read every single comment and they inspire me so much. I'm not kidding, please leave a review. Don't make me sell out and get sponsorship and do adverts. Thank you so much for listening to Yoga Pose.